My mission is to end political polarization, and when I mention this to politically passionate people, here's what they hear. You want me to compromise my principles? You want me to ignore science? In this video, I will describe 4 stages to get from our current place of political polarization to collaboration. So the first is we're politically polarized, the second is spending compromise, and the third is middle ground, and the fourth is collaboration. Now, collaboration is not the same as compromise. Giving up on what you believe to be true is not a recipe for success. Giving up your preconceptions of a false truth is a recipe for success. In our current politically polarized state, we believe that we are right and the other side is wrong. We tend to rationalize our side and poke fun at the other side. We will never properly define the problem we face as Americans if we remain in this politically polarized state. Why? Because in our current state, our mission is to win. And who are we fighting against? Our fellow Americans. We want to win and we want our political opponents to lose. In this state of being, we will rationalize our side's solution, even if that solution is completely idiotic. We can't show weakness in our political party loyalty, or we will be exploited by the other side. And if you want to negotiate or compromise with the other side, you will lose in your next primary election, where your district only supports loyalists. The spending compromise looks like an effort at a peaceful solution, but it is always a step in the wrong direction. So let me give you an example. A husband and wife are arguing about money. The wife's car is 3 years old and she wants to buy a new car. The husband says, "We can't afford to buy a new car." And after a few rounds of hurtful arguments, the husband finally gives in. He says, "Well, you can buy a new car if I can buy a new car." And the wife responds, "Well, what about the budget?" And the husband cleverly responds, "Well, we can borrow money to give us both what we want." Is it any wonder that we've amassed a national debt that is nearing $40 trillion? In Congress, Democrats and Republicans vote to pass omnibus spending bills that create more debt for our country. These spending bills are gifts to local constituents to help incumbent politicians win the next election in their local districts. It's tempting to settle for a half solution when two opposing views seem intransigent. So let's say that the Democrats and Republicans are fighting over how many migrant visas should be issued each year. The Democrats insist that we should allow 1 million new migrant visas per year. Republicans insist that they will not allow more than 500,000 migrant visas per year. The middle ground in this situation will be to agree to allow 750,000 migrant visas per year. This is more than what the Republicans want, and it's less than what the Democrats want. Unfortunately, both the 500,000 and the 1 million migrant visas are arbitrary numbers. Both political parties have not defined the immigration problem well enough to know what number of migrant visas should be allowed. Instead of finding the truth, each side picks a number that is more extreme than the number they believe it should be. Why? Because they know that there will be a middle ground negotiation sometime in the future. So we all do middle ground negotiations. I mean, let's say that you want to buy a used car for $10,000. The seller is asking $12,500, and you decide to offer the seller $7,500 for his car. Why? Because you hope that they will settle for a middle ground payment of $10,000. The problem with middle ground negotiations is that they rarely focus on solving problems. Instead, it's a sort of political gamesmanship that keeps politicians in power who know how to play this game. So let's say that there's a beam that must be installed on a skyscraper. One engineer believes that the beam must be 10 inches wide by 20 inches deep. Another engineer believes the beam should be 20 inches wide by 40 inches deep. Do you think it's reasonable to settle on a beam that is halfway between both engineers' opinions? In the case of beam sizing, there are engineering principles that govern flex and strength of the beam. Now, in the engineering world, the size of the beam is calculated with a specific safety factor applied. There is no negotiation. I would not want to stand in a skyscraper where the engineering decisions were made based on middle ground negotiations. Nor do I want to live in a country where decisions are made with middle ground negotiations. The definition of collaboration is to work together to create something. So let's take a contentious issue that arose in 2021. 3 vaccinations had emerged by the end of 2020 to immunize people against the COVID-19 virus. Skeptics believed that the new vaccine would cause irreparable harm to anyone who got the jab. Proponents believed that the country should adopt a vaccine mandate to stop the spread of COVID-19. In our polarized state, vaccine proponents poked fun at skeptics, calling them anti-vaxxers. The name that skeptics used for proponents of the vaccine was sheeple. The spending compromise was government will pay for everyone to get a vaccine. The middle ground was to let companies and government organizations decide on vaccine mandates. In collaboration, the problem must first be defined. The COVID-19 vaccine skeptic must deliberately share the information they have that the vaccine is dangerous. Likewise, the vaccine proponent must respectfully rebut the vaccine skeptic. Vaccine proponents must concede valid points made by the vaccine skeptic. This conversation must take place with open minds seeking to find the truth. It is not a debate where one side wins. The only winner in a reasonable discussion is the truth. Each side likely has misinformation mixed with facts. Instead of poking fun or getting angry, it helps if each side educates and listens with respect. If collaboration happens, the truth wins. In the case of the COVID-19 vaccine, the pro-vaccine side may be right and the anti-vaccine side may be wrong. This isn't a compromise. There is no middle ground that sacrifices the truth for half-truth. When engineers design a new product, they collaborate on the viability of that product design with other engineers. Since engineers are trying to build a viable product, they don't fight like our politicians in Washington, D.C. After they have worked through the design challenges, engineers will build a prototype of that design. The first time the prototype is used, it will fail. Engineers know that the first design will fail. It always does. Why? Because as brilliant as you think you are, you will not anticipate every problem. This trial and error process is conducted several times until the engineers arrive at their final design. They then document their final design in detail so that their successful results can be replicated. There was a movement in the 1990s called Total Quality Management, or TQM. This fad started because American companies wanted to create a more deliberate approach to improving their businesses. This improvement process was often labeled re-engineering. In fact, this is where I got the name for my movement of re-engineering politics. Within the TQM movement was a process called the problem-solving process. There are 5 steps to this process that our politicians would be wise to adopt. Step 1, define the problem. Step 2, generate alternative solutions. Step 3, select the best solution. And step 4, implement the solution. And step 5, measure results. So let's revisit our immigration problem. Democrats want 1 million migrant visas. Republicans want 500,000 migrant visas. Both numbers are not based on any rational problem identification. So let's say that a reasonable problem identification process estimates that 1.5 million migrants who do not rely on social services is the best solution. Our Congress must then write legislation that fits this solution and measure the results of their law. After these measurements, they must rewrite the law to accommodate any unforeseen problems that arise from their solution. U.S. companies adopted TQM from the Japanese when it was apparent that Japanese car manufacturers were beating our American car manufacturers in the quality and value of new vehicles. I believe the same process can work to help our politicians collaborate on the best solutions for our country. Like me, you may have a hard time visualizing any of our politically polarized politicians following such a deliberate quality improvement process and writing new laws. So what can we do to move in a better direction with our political systems in the United States? This may be a hard pill for you to swallow, but we citizens are the problem. We vote for the politicians who fight for our side. We rarely consider voting for politicians who are problem solvers or collaborators. We watch news programs that affirm our beliefs and denigrate the actions of the other side. A collaborator is not a weakling. A collaborator understands the cause and effect of legislative decisions. You can tell a collaborator from a fighter and how they conduct themselves in a political campaign. They are often the first person to lose in a primary election. Collaborators refuse to name call and instead speak about the substance of their opinions. If we reward collaboration over political partisanship, politicians will comply or they'll lose their position of power. While we are the primary problem, the secondary problem is the unconstitutional process used to elect government leaders. So while factions are sure to form in any self-government, our system of government was never intended to be run by two powerful political parties. Our current system of fighting feeds those two political parties, and if we stop fighting, those political parties will lose their power. This is a deep subject for a different time. However, at some point, we do need to stop the two-party system that thrives on building division instead of unity. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. I also encourage you to subscribe to my Re-Engineering Politics YouTube channel to learn more about how we can become a more united states. I'll see you in my next video.